Hey everybody, Scott Velasco here, and I'm going to walk you through my favorite parts of the Pro Tools 210M Lesson 1. So come on. Some of the feedback we got at the end of class was that the lesson could have been focused a little bit more on modern electronic styles of music production. And going right into Lesson 1 in the book, you'll notice that as they're talking about click preferences, they use a song from the mid-90s by REM called Everybody Hurts. And I went, well, this would be a great opportunity to update the material a little bit. If you're not familiar with Everybody Hurts, this song is so depressing. I mean, it's supposed to be uplifting, I think, but it is a slow drag. This song's like Knuck If You Buck for people with moderate to severe clinical depression. This is party music for people who think Lexapro is a party drug. But the feature that made it so useful for this lesson is that it's in kind of an unusual time signature. It's in 12/8 time, or at least that's how they're counting it in the book. And the book says this might be an opportunity to change your click to use a dotted value. So instead of having eighth note equals 100 BPM, you can change to dotted quarter note and get 4 pulses instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. So that actually makes sense and helps. I just had to find a song that was in 12/8 time. Yeah, comparatively, there's not a whole bunch of them. But I did think of one. For my theme song. Thank you, the old Kanye, for being just weird enough to do something like this. By the way, side note, I might have chosen like the wrong moment in history to pull up a Kanye song, especially a Kanye song called Black Skinhead. Let's just all collectively agree to ignore that. And if you ever want to have like a conversation with me about art versus artist, I'm in. So let's go through the workflow, how this is all set up, the interconnectivity of these equipment pieces. This is my MIDI interface. It connects my computer through USB and routes MIDI data over 5-pin MIDI cables. So Pro Tools sends MIDI notes and other data out of the interface into the Moog grandmother's MIDI in. The MIDI out of the grandmother is then daisy-chained to the MIDI input of the MPC. The grandmother's audio out is being routed into Pro Tools on a mono track, and the MPC's audio out is being routed into Pro Tools on a stereo track. So remember, MIDI is not audio, but just a collection of data messages sent to an instrument. In Pro Tools, there's a MIDI track called Bass Synth. The MIDI track output is routed to the port on my MIDI interface that is connected to the grandmother synth. On grandmother here, I just have that low bass drone note that comes in a couple times through the song programmed in. It sounds like this. The audio output of the synth is then going through an input on my interface, my audio interface. There's an audio track in the session that will allow me to mix or affect the synth signal when it's in input, or record the synth signal when it's armed. So when Pro Tools sees a MIDI note on my MIDI track, it fires it out to this grandmother. Grandma makes a deep and righteous noise, which is routed back into Pro Tools on an audio track. In fact, let's just go ahead and record enable this track, and I'll show you what that sounds like. Now the MPC is being routed in basically the same fashion as the bass synth. The only difference is I'm using a different channel, in this case MIDI channel 10 to get to the MPC. So on my MPC here I have the samples that we want to use in this song recorded into the first 5 pads, starting with this. This is our verse accent. And then we've got the Kanye yells, screams, yelps. The audio output of the MPC is then routed into the stereo audio channel in Pro Tools through my audio interface. You'll notice using this workflow allows me to use real-time plug-in processing like this tape echo that I have on those samples. So the challenge of this whole thing is going to be getting Ableton Link, another key part of Lesson 1, to lock Pro Tools to Ableton. And so you'll see on this screen, we have Pro Tools. On that screen, we have Ableton. Now on our Pro Tools window, remember we have to show the Ableton Link functions, which can be found right there under the Edit window menu. Turn on Ableton Link, make sure the link button is illuminated, and you'll also want to make sure that the Start/Stop button is linked so that any start or stop command from Pro Tools starts and stops the transport in Ableton. In the Ableton window, the link functionality can be found in the top left. The track outputs for these stems are using the Pro Tools Audio Bridge 16. So I'm sending the first track out Audio Bridge 1-2, the second track out Audio Bridge 3-4, the third and fourth tracks out Audio Bridge 5-6. And in Pro Tools, I've made a routing folder called Ableton. It contains 3 stereo audio tracks that use the same Audio Bridge 16 inputs that are coming out of the stems in Ableton. So in this case, Audio Bridge 1-2, 3-4, and 5-6. Now this song is such a patchwork quilt. I defy anyone to find one steady tempo through the whole thing. I don't think it exists. So I built a bar beat marker tempo map that basically has a new bar beat marker set at the beginning of every measure. So how do we enter bar beat markers? You find the spot in the track where you want the tempo event to occur. You use Command I, and that opens your bar beat marker dialog. And you type in what point in the grid you want that sample to represent. So now that we've got it all set up, really the only thing left to do is hit play in Pro Tools and watch it go.
For my theme song, my leather black jeans on, my by any means on, part and I'm getting my scream on, 4 in the morning and I'm zoning, they say I'm possessed.
So there you go. I hope that helps make sense of this lesson and put it a little bit more in a modern electronic music production context. Remember, all of these lessons could be applied to any genre of music, really. It's just understanding these differences in workflow that might apply specifically to your style. My name's Scott Velasco, and I'll see you next time.